Hello, hello, welcome. I am going to, if you can please mute yourself upon entry. And then if I see you, I'll click on it to help you out, but we definitely appreciate it. Hello, welcome. Happy to see y'all. Welcome back. For folks who are in our first session, we're on our second session of day 2 of the summit, y'all. And I'm super excited to have you here. This is your first session. Welcome to the Grad School Success Summit. We are in our 5th year, which is amazing, and I'm so grateful to have you here and be a part of our community. Today we have another great presentation coming off of our community building session that we just completed, and I'm just excited to see this. Like, I saw the slides and I was like hyped, so I think it's going to be a great session. Today we have Kennen here, who is at Northwestern, and he is the host and the brilliant mind behind Science with Kennen Entertainment. It's a science communication subsidiary designed to increase STEM literacy, education, and engagement amongst the general public and throughout K-12 education. So I'm loving this adventure theme. I think it's going to be an awesome conversation, and cannot wait to see you all, see your thoughts and questions in the chat. Kennen, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, this is my first talk that I've given in a while, so hopefully it delivers well. One thing that I always forget to do, your introduction was great, but I always just feel like whenever I'm talking to people that we've just known each other for like 30 years, which is from my life, but I realize that you guys don't know me. So I'm gonna give a little bit of background about me and my experience with graduate school, and then we'll kind of talk about what I think is the most important lesson I've learned about my journey through graduate school. So yeah, my name's Kennen. I am a 5th year PhD candidate, but also a 1st year PhD student, and I'll circle back around to what that means. My background is I got my bachelor's degree in microbiology from Western Illinois University. After that, I went to a transition program for MD PhD program, so med school, grad school at University of Michigan. That's where I realized that I did not want to be a medical doctor, so I promptly left and applied to graduate school in biomedical research. So I've been studying viruses here at Northwestern for the last 5 years, which has been quite topical. And then I realized that talking about what I do as a scientist and relaying the information that I have in the form of what's known as science communication was really what I was passionate about. And so after 5 years in a PhD program, I am actually leaving my current program at the end of this month with a master's, and we'll be starting a brand new PhD program in what's called learning sciences. So it's cognitive science and educational design here in the fall. So I've had 3 post-undergraduate experiences, which I like to think makes me one of the most experienced graduate student talkers in the room. But you could also look at it as makes me the least successful graduate student here. So whichever way you want to take it, I hope that it's the former, and that I'm able to impart some of the wisdom, quote unquote wisdom, that I have. But even if it's the latter, at least you'll walk away with a list of things not to do in your journey. So with that, I'll kick off my talk, which I like to call Choose Your Graduate Adventure. And I think that probably one of the most important things I've learned through this whole journey of grad school is that grad school is kind of like a choose your own adventure book, where there's lots of ways to get to the ending, but the choices that you make along the way impact the journey and the experience that you have. And it's actually our responsibility as graduate students to control the journey and make sure that it meets the needs that we want as a graduate student, rather than just expecting the program and your advisors to know what you want out of it and give you the experience you need. So I'm going to kind of talk about that, and I'll go to this next slide. Perfect. And so like any good story, we'll break it down into a beginning, a middle, and an end, which I'm going to start with knowing your why, how to choose going to graduate school, and which is the right degree to pursue, followed by knowing your what, which is what are you trying to get out of your experience? And this is really where it's up to you to define what you're seeking in your graduate school adventure. And finally is knowing your worth. And that's knowing your value, not only personally, but also what you bring to the program and the bargaining power that you have in defining what your graduate journey is going to look like. So we'll go ahead and just kick it off with the beginnings, knowing your why. So when you're choosing graduate school, I would say that this is one of, if not the most important questions you're going to answer for yourself. And this is, why do you want to go to graduate school? In that question, you're going to ask yourself, why choose graduate school versus, say, an alternative route to accomplish your goals? And then once you've decided to make that decision, is which graduate program is right for you? Or should you be pursuing a master's or a doctorate? And all of this is going to revolve around your why. Your why not only dictates where you're going to start along your graduate journey, but it's also going to serve as your driving force, the power that helps you through your graduate journey. When times get tough, you always have your why to fall back to remember what it is that you entered into this program to do. So starting with why choose graduate school? So when I talk to graduate students, including myself, I find that there's typically 3 buckets that we fall into for why choose graduate school. The first is, I need the training. So this is, I know that I want to be a professor, or I want to be a medical doctor, or I want to be a lawyer. And before I can do heart surgery, I need to get the training to understand how to be a surgeon. So I need training, option 1. Option 2, I need the credentials. So maybe it's like, I want to get paid the big bucks and go into consulting or be a policymaker. And it doesn't really matter what retrograde axonal transport means, but what does matter is the fact that I have those 3 letters at the end of my name that that open the doors for me to get the job and the pay that I want. And the third bucket, especially for a lot of people like myself in biomedical research, is I love research. And so normally this manifests in one of 2 ways. The ideological way is that, I just love research and I could see myself doing research or doing the work that I'm doing for the rest of my life. But also for a lot of us, it could look like, I love research. I came out of undergrad liking research and got my degree in field X, but I actually don't know what to do now. So I'm just going to kick the can down the road and go to grad school where I can keep doing what I like until I figure out what the next step is. Now, ideally, if you fall into all 3 of these buckets, you love doing research or the work, you know that you want to enhance your training to go on to your next career step, and you need those letters, that degree in order to do what you want, then you are the perfect trifecta. And grad school is most likely the correct choice for you. And that's great. But if you're looking at this and you're like, I realize that while I like this, I kind of fall into like one of these circles, maybe more than any of the others. So maybe I just need the training. Well, instead of committing yourself to, let's say, a PhD, which can be anywhere from 3 to 9 years of your life, a lot of stress and anxiety that comes around with it, you might consider doing something like a certificate program, something where you could go take a boot camp or get a certificate that shows that you have the training and the specialty, the expertise, in order to jump in and start getting paid rather than being in a master's program and paying to go to school. If you just need the credentials, you might consider doing a post-bac program. So a post-bac, you can get essentially a second bachelor's degree to go on, and instead of going into paying to do a master's or perhaps a graduate program. Or if you really just love research, this is something that I see a lot, is you could always just go and get a job in the field. So I know a lot of people who are like, I just love doing bench research as a biomedical researcher. And I always go, well, why did you decide to, spend the last 7 years of your life working on this degree and being yelled at by your advisor, where you could be making real money, working normal hours and doing the same bench research that you love? And sometimes it's just because they hadn't thought through it and they thought that the only way forward was to pursue that next degree. But if the way forward after looking at this is that there is a little bit of overlap between these, then graduate school is still probably the right choice for you. And so now it comes down to your why. Why are you going to graduate school? The alternatives are not going to put you to where you want to be. Where do you want to be? And which level of training is going to get you there the quickest? And so this is where you're going to decide between a master's program. So you want to do something in like counseling, where you don't necessarily need to get a PhD or a PsyD to go on. A master's might be a good level with less time commitment, versus a doctorate degree. If, say, you want to be a medical doctor, you could choose either to be a PA, or if you want more of the autonomy that a full medical doctor has, then going to medical school is the right decision for you. So taking that into consideration, I say that your why is most important because the why tells you whether or not graduate school is the right answer for you. But also when you know your why, these are the reasons that I need the credentials, I need the training, and I love what I do. If you have those, then that's what you can always fall back on when times are hard. It's like, why am I doing this? Well, it's because I need this. And that's my motivation to push through. So if you have the time, take a screenshot of this and just go ahead and write down, what is your why for being interested in or applying to or being in graduate school? What's your driving factor? So once you have your why, the next question then becomes, what is your what, right? So this is the fun part because your what is what's going to define your journey. This is where we start making those choices of what our graduate experience looks like. So the first question is closely related to our why, but what is it that you want to do? A lot of us, once we get caught up in grad school, we start getting stuck in the weeds and just thinking that everything that we're doing is to get that publication or to get that degree. And we forget that graduate school is just training to do what our real dream is, our real goal is. It's a stepping stone to get where we want to be. And so defining what it is that we want to do, what is that dream job, is going to help us be focused on what are the skills and what is the path forward. The next thing is, what are the skills that you need? So once you know what you want to do, what career it is that you're working towards, ask yourself, not just ask yourself, but also research, go and talk to people in that field, look it up online. What are the skills that you need to develop during this graduate school training, during this program that you're learning? What are the skills that you need to walk away from that you have as core skills in order to get the job that you want? And the third thing that we want to look at the end of this, and I heard this touched on in the last session in the open panel, is what is the environment that you need to surround yourself in and that you need to build in order to nurture your growth of these skills? So who is the correct mentor that's going to help you develop the skills and encourage you to do the things to go on to get that career? And what are the people and the students that you want to be surrounded in and the environment you want to be in that's going to encourage you and not drown you as you're going through this journey? So we'll start with, what do you want to do? Why is this so important? Well, I began this talk by talking about how the graduate experience, a lot of us think that's kind of this linear thing where you go to grad school, you do your checklist, you leave with a degree, and then you have your job. But in reality, graduate school looks a lot like this. There's a bunch of options and a bunch of choices that you have. Should I do this project or this project? Should I take this course or this course? And as we refine our skills and we make these choices, it's going to direct this skill set that we have for what we're ultimately going to leave our program with. Now, a lot of us start off our program bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking, wow, graduate school is really great. I can't wait to do this. And all we think about is like, this journey is going to be a lot of fun. But somewhere in the mess, amongst all of these choices and options and all the projects that are being thrown at us and the decisions and check marks that we have, we start to feel overwhelmed. In fact, there was a study that was published in Nature that showed that like 60% of graduate schools report adverse mental health outcomes. So whether that's depression, anxiety, high levels of stress. And a lot of that is because we're faced with all these options and we feel like we're lost and drowning in the choices that we have. We didn't tailor the path that we wanted to go to. And so by the end of it, we feel like maybe we just have this subset of skills and we start panicking about, well, what's our next set? What's our next decision or our outcome? Because we just kind of listed and ended up somewhere. I want everybody who's going into grad school to avoid this journey. Instead, I want us to have a focused approach. If you start by having, why am I going to grad school? And you know that your end result is, what am I going to do? Pick your career, whether that's physician, professor, research scientist. You know where you're going to be. Then instead of having this whole plethora of possible outcomes that you could have from your degree, you start to get a more focused approach. You don't have all this craziness to it. And the less craziness you have, the less stress you're going to start feeling throughout your process, your adventure. And so the important part of this, of knowing what do I want to do and helping to focus that, is that now that we know what we want to do, we can start focusing on what are the skills that I want to design my experience to teach me. So I'll use myself as an example. We'll talk about what I wish that I would do, or actually what I am doing going into this new PhD compared to what my original journey looked like. So for me, why do I want to go to graduate school? Well, I want the expertise that will allow me to become a professional as a policymaker and decision maker when it comes to education policy and to research funding. And I also want the skills to learn how to be a better communicator and educator in what I do. And what I want to do is I want to work in the field of science communication. So knowing that, I can pick out the skills that I need to have. I need to be a good scientist. I need to be able to have scientific literacy, be able to read and interpret and understand the science that I see. But I also need to have a skill, communication skills. I need to be good at communicating through different ways. And I also need to know how to educate the people that I'm trying to communicate to. So using that, picking the program that I'm in now, I said, these are the things that I want to learn. This is the goal that I want to be at. And when I started, before I even applied to programs, I started interviewing the programs and saying, hey, this is what I want. How can you help me to get to this place? Instead of having the reverse mentality when I first applied and was like, hey, will anybody take me? I really want to be here. I don't care if you want to take me. I want to know, should I take you? Because I've got a goal and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to design my education so that I can achieve my goals. Can you do that? And so ideally, you find a program that allows you to do these in a linear way so that you do this in the most efficient journey possible to get from point A through this transition to having the skills you want to point B. Now, I wish that's what had happened, but instead my journey looked a little something like this. I started out thinking science is pretty cool. You know, I've loved this for a while. So I went to school to be a scientist. And then I realized as a scientist, I was too far removed from the actual impact on the people that I wanted to help. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll try doing communication. I did a little bit of science adjacent entertainment, but I realized that communication just in itself and just making content didn't have the impact that I wanted. I wanted to be able to help people's lives with the knowledge that I had. And so I finally landed on science communication being the right field for me. But this squiggly journey with backtracks and forward tracks and ups and downs, each of those turns, each of those wiggles is a point of stress. It's a point of unknowing, and it's a point of anxiety that can build up inside of you that starts building as tension and compounds as the years go by. What we really want is this linear model where we're already going to be faced with the trials of graduate school. Graduate school is never going to be a cakewalk, but if we can eliminate some of the other extra stresses that are out there, it's going to make our process a lot more enjoyable and our adventure and our experience a lot more enjoyable so that we walk out of this not only with a good experience, but also taking the most out of that experience into where we go in our next steps of life. So with that, I'd like you guys to once again take a screenshot. I know, crappy thing about having a talk from a teacher is that I love workbooks. And I want you guys to go ahead and fill this out for yourselves. So, you know, we've talked about why are you going to graduate school? Now, what is your end goal? Graduate school is that training. What is it going to train you to do? And what are the skills that you're hoping to learn while you're in graduate school? Once you know your what's, right? So what are you going to do? What do you want to learn? This last part is what is the environment that you need in order to help you succeed? And what this really is going towards is how do you pick a mentor? How do you pick a lab? And I love some of the conversation I'd heard in the previous panel about this is that it really is important to find a mentor and to be clear with your mentor about what you're looking for so that you guys can help each other. There should be a mutual relationship. So the first thing is be clear with what you're looking for. It can be intimidating. I understand that. Maybe you really want to join this lab, but you feel that if you're clear about this is what my goals are, maybe they don't want you in there. I will argue until I'm blue in the face and pass out that during your graduate experience, it does not matter what your project is. Maybe being in the general field of what you want to do is important, but your project is not the purpose of your graduate experience. The purpose of your graduate experience is to gain training. It's to gain the skills to move on and the skill set in the way that you think in order to apply to whatever next situation you have. So being clear in what you're looking for is going to help you find the right environment and the right mentor who wants to and can help you achieve those goals. The second thing is being honest in what your expectations are of each other. Like I said, this is a mutual relationship between yourself and your program and yourself and your mentor. And so it's very it's perfectly acceptable for you to have the expectations that you're paying money or you're giving your time or committing work to the institution that you're at in exchange for a specific training that's going to help you accomplish your career. You need to be clear on what those expectations are and where your career is going to be. But it's also fair for your institution and your mentor to be clear with the expectations that they have for you, whether that's you're in lab from 9 to 5, or that you participate in weekly lab meetings. Knowing what the expectations are and that they both align with what the two of you want is going to help relieve a lot of stress and give you something to lean back on when things are tough. And you can say, well, these are the expectations that we defined. The last thing is be sure that what you discuss with your mentor aligns with what you hear about the environment. And this is more or less directed to the incoming and the new graduate students, especially if you're like in an umbrella program where you get to do rotations and talk to different mentors. It's a weird thought, but as graduate students, we are actually a hot commodity. And when you interview with different labs, a lot of times they're going to give you the best sales pitch because they want you to be in their lab. But before you bite on whatever bait they're giving to you, make sure that you go and talk to the people that have been in the lab before, or the people that are in the program of what they know about that, to make sure that what you're hearing about the expectations that you guys have agreed on is equally what other students are experiencing and seeing, and that what the other students are experiencing and seeing in that lab align with what you know is going to help you to be successful. So picking your mentor is the next and final step of knowing what to design your graduate experience. So the last step is we now know why we want to go to graduate school. We've defined what we're looking for and had clear and open communication to build a program that helps to meet the goals that we want in order to be successful. And part of that also incorporates if you ever want to do like internships. These are things to bring up to your advisor in your program, and picking the right mentor for that. But lastly, once you're in the program, is to always remember your worth. So these are kind of a few final thoughts about once you're in the program, things to always keep in mind. The first is that grad school is symbiotic. It's not parasitic. And this is the microbiologist in me that loves these terms, but we'll define what that is. The second is that grad school is about education and not accomplishment. And that may seem blasphemous, especially to a lot of PIs, but I'll explain why it's about your education and not necessarily only about what you accomplish. And the last point we'll end on is building up so that we don't burn out. So knowing your worth, grad school is symbiotic. What I mean by this is that you chose grad school, but also grad school chose you. So you chose the program that you wanted to apply to. You chose the school based on whatever credentials. But after you went through that interview process, it wasn't like the grad school just took you and was like, all right, you're going to give us what we want. They interviewed you and said, this is the type of student that we want. They have invested inside of you. It's a mutual relationship between you and your institution, which gives you bargaining power. You should never feel that you owe something to the institution because the institution equally owes something to you. You are going to be a representation of their program. The second thing is that as part of this mutual relationship is that there is this even exchange of goods for services, whether that's you paying to go to a master's program, which in that case, you're literally giving them money, and you, to a certain extent, should have the ability to say, hey, I'm paying you to teach me these things. But if you're in a program like mine, where it's a PhD program that I'm actually paid to be here, what I'm giving them is my services. I am not free labor for them, but I am labor. And the work that I put into there is in exchange for the training that they are giving to me. So if there's ever a point that I don't feel like I am being trained the way that I want to be, or that I should, or is just for what I'm giving in, I have every right and shouldn't feel uncomfortable about bringing that up. But vice versa, is that that's not an excuse to slack and say, well, I'm here for my training if I'm not actually giving in enough to the program. It's a symbiotic relationship. And that kind of feeds into this last mutual beneficial relationship, is that feeling of that each party should feel that they're getting something equally out of it. It's a give and take. It's not just on you as the graduate student that all the expectations are placed. And a lot of times I feel like as graduate students, we forget that. The next part is that, remember, graduate school is school. You're not working for them. You are not a slave, which is what we often think of as you're a student. You're not a slave. You're not free labor. You're not cheap labor. You are here primarily to learn, to be trained, to go on to do whatever it was that dream that you had is you're being trained so that you can be successful there. And that benefits the school because the more successful you are afterwards, the better that reflects on the school. Schools brag about who works at their department and what their alumni go on to do. They don't care that their graduate student did this. What they care is that their graduate student who published 3 papers got a lab at Harvard, and now they get to say that. It is your outcome, what you become is the highest value and what you're striving towards. So the whole point of the work that you do as a graduate student is to be trained, not just to work. That brings me to the last point that I'll wrap up on, which is build up so that you don't burn out. I know it's a cliche, but graduate school truly is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You want to make sure that there's nothing wrong with taking on a small amount to test where your limits and bounds are, particularly as you start. You're not going to be the same level of competency, the same level of knowledge that you are at a 4th-year graduate student as you are on a 1st-year graduate student. But it's okay to take on little bits and build as you become better at your job, rather than a tendency a lot of graduate students have is to take on a lot, to be impressive or to show that they can do it. And then they end up taking on too much that they end up burnt out. Which brings me into my next set, which is time management, probably the most important skill that you'll take away from your graduate experience, because it can apply to any job that you do outside of this. And this is knowing that it's okay to say no. It's okay to be able to prioritize things so that you can get at them at your pace and you're not juggling too much or taking on so much that you end up burning the candle from both ends and burning out before you can complete. And the last thing to remember as you're knowing your worth is that it's about balance. You'll hear this a lot. What is that? This balance is that your graduate program, graduate life is a lifestyle. It's not just something that's going to be here and then you can push it away. Once you enter into a graduate program, it's a big commitment of time, of mental effort, of responsibility. And you need to find a way to integrate that program, integrate that lifestyle into your life, rather than making it something that you burn out in one section and can't balance away. Grad school should be part of your life, which means that the other parts of your life should still exist. Still make sure that you make time for friends, for yourself. Never put the expectation that you should be working nights and weekends all the time, or being in the lab or wherever you're at 24/7, because this is not a shackled place. This is part of your life, but not the whole thing. So hopefully that is a speed version of looking at the responsibilities and the things that come with the graduate program and how you can understand that this is a mutual relationship you're entering into, and that you have the power and the responsibility to go ahead and design that graduate experience to fit your needs and to be what you want to have coming out of it. So hopefully you walk away knowing why you're wanting to go to graduate school, knowing the skills that you hope to take away from your graduate experience, and outlining a way for you to accomplish those on the same page as the mentor that you're taking on, and remembering your worth throughout the whole process so that you reduce the amount of burnout, or hopefully don't burn out at all, and feel like you always have that leverage and bargaining power to make sure that your voice is heard, to make sure that you're getting what you want out of the experience. So with that, to all the new and oncoming graduate students, good luck to you. To anyone that's already in, hopefully you'll get out soon. I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks for your time.
Kennen, thank you so much, y'all. Let's throw some reactions, some hand claps, throw some love for this amazing presentation. It was great. I was firing away on Twitter. So your Twitter is probably blowing up right now with all of my tweets from everything you shared, because you dropped major gems. Thank you so much. There are actually quite a few questions here, so I'm really excited to kind of throw them at you and get your thoughts. So someone shared their advisor will not work with them until they take their classes, so they have to take her class, and it's frustrating because there's people who, she seems to have a struggle with advisors wanting to research with her, right? Do research with her. And they're making a prerequisite that she takes the classes that the advisor teaches. Any advice?
I see. So what I'm hearing from this is that the advisor she's planning on working with is saying that she can't start doing research until she takes the classes, but there are other advisors who are either asking her to do research
Oh,
or
excuse me,
Oh.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
I've been to several graduate programs and like my advisors never want to work with me, but then they'll work with other people. And I thought like it seems like other programs, like people are working with their advisors, like they have actual mentors, but I never do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing that jumps out to me is that if that's your mentor, well, the first thing is always communication, right? Is going and having that communication of asking why that's the case, comparing it to the other people. But if that's how I don't know what your program is, but if there's a mismatch between your mentor, especially if you're early on, that can be a great sign that it's time to find a new mentor who does want to work with you or who has that communication so that, you don't keep running into this year after year and it holding you back rather than finding a mentor who wants to help push you forward.
Thank you for that. I agree. Okay, there's lots of questions here, so let's see. That was the first one. And then someone asked, are there any tips for going into grad school feeling like their undergrad is lacking, especially due to COVID restrictions, right? This person didn't get any lab opportunity in their final years because of the pandemic. And now they feel like they're going into the program trying to make up for it. So any advice? I think so many of this feels right on time for so many people starting right now who are coming out of undergrad where, yeah, they weren't able to go into lab and have those experiences. So please share any advice you have, Kennen.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my advice is not word. So it's only my thoughts on it. But especially with the pandemic and not being able to have experiences, that's affecting a lot of people. What I would say to that is two aspects. The first is that pretty much all students who are coming into the graduate program have imposter syndrome, where we feel that like I came straight from undergrad into my PhD and I was like, people who have masters know more than me. Everybody here knows more than me. And we're all struggling for that. And any good graduate program, which is most programs that you're going to get into, they already have that built into there where you're going to be taking classes, you're going to be working in labs, and your mentors are going to be teaching you. It's truly a learning experience. You have nothing to prove to anybody. You got into the program, you've already proved that you're good enough to be there. Now it's all about you learning. And so if you don't have those experiences, that's okay. That's what graduate school is there for. And there's going to be a lot of other people coming into the program who don't have those experiences as well. But again, this is a learning opportunity. It's not a job. You aren't going to get fired because you don't have lab experience. If they cared about that, they wouldn't have brought you into the program. So I would say, as much as you can, don't worry about it and embrace the opportunity to learn these new skills and grow in this program.
I love that. And you said it just right. Pretty much, unless someone finished before the pandemic, everyone's going to be having that same experience, and that lack of experience that universities are going to have to address. Like that's just the reality, and it's no one's fault. So another question, someone says they start their MA in a little over 2 weeks and they have no clue how to approach how to approach professors to work on their research projects. So do you have any advice for reaching out to potential advisors?
Yeah, it's jaded, but anecdotally it's true. It's that research advisors are vain. And the best way to reach out to them is to look at the work that they're doing. Clearly you want to work with them you like something that they're doing. Read one of their papers, 2 of their papers if you're going to be really good at it, and go into them and just either send them an email or go to their offices and say, I think that what you're doing is really cool. Insert topic. I read this paper and I thought that this was cool. And 9 times out of 10, that professor will do the majority of the talking and be so happy that you're interested in what they have to do that they will start having discussions about opening things up with you. That's the best way to get into any lab or open any door.
Totally agree. I think this feels relevant to the know your worth. There are students with disabilities and they want to take a lower course load than like what's required for say their assistantship. So do you have any advice for advocating for themselves to maybe lighten their load in talking to their department chair?
Yeah, so your program should have a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion office, and they should also have a disabilities office where it is illegal to if someone has a disability, to not give them the accommodations that they need in order to be successful. And so if you're uncomfortable with starting off at your chair, start off at those offices. They are literally there to be advocates for you. And you can go through what your disabilities are, and then they can be the intermediate between talking to your program administration. But also remember that everybody's just human. And if you're comfortable with it, talk to your advisor, talk to your program administration, and let them know about these concerns that you have, and have an open dialogue with what you're hopefully looking for, and if they think that that is okay. And if you guys can meet it that way, then that's great, because now you've just made a connection with the administration, the higher ups. It's going to help you further on. And if not, then you still have the offices to turn to that are going to be able to help you and bring that administrative support to get you the help that you need.
100% agree. I think that's so spot on. Someone says they are having a problem finding the appropriate program. They have an intersection of many interests and having some difficulty finding that right one. This person in particular is an MBA candidate, but their focus is in like looking to further my career in food sustainability and technology in a doctorate program. So okay. business, food, sustainability, and technology.
That's an important bubble.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. So finding the right program. I think this can take time and effort. My advice on this is essentially, I want to be a science communicator. That word exists on social media. It doesn't really exist as a real job. And so I had to build out the program, or find a program that met those needs. So that slide that had, this is what I want to do, these are the skills that I want. If you know where you want to be at, that's where you start, is you fill that out and you start looking at the programs that are going to focus on those skills. And then you go and you start interviewing those programs before you even apply, and let them know what you want. That's exactly what I did. I went to these programs learning sciences I'd never heard of before, but they were talking about doing education and making environments for underrepresented communities. And I was like, hey, I want to do this, but I want to do it on social media. This is what my dream is. And I talked to a couple of different programs all across the country until I found the ones that were excited not only about the work that I wanted to do, but also had the course load and that forward approval of like, yeah, we can make this work for you. And so in that case, you get to do something that's kind of exciting, which is design your own PhD program. And if you're really successful, one day you could come back and that could be a real PhD program that maybe you teach at, or you come and guest lecture at someday.
Yes. I actually have some thoughts on this with the idea of being in business and food technology. Two things. First of all, when I did engineering and public policy for one of my PhD programs, I swear to you all, I tell people all the time, I literally Googled engineering and public policy. Carnegie Mellon program showed up. I said, okay, I'm going to do this. So one, don't underestimate a very simple Google search. Second, one program that comes to mind for me and might be an opportunity for you is like actually agribusiness. So getting a PhD in agribusiness, it's going to touch on the business plate, it's going to touch on the food and the innovation. Prior to the pivot I made in my PhD program, I was in agricultural engineering. So I actually met quite a few agribusiness folks. And if I'm not mistaken, there's someone on here who might have done a PhD in something close to agribusiness. I'm not going to put their name out there, but it's a T and a C in the initials. Tell me if I'm wrong, fellow former Aggie. But I would say that you can be creative. Of course, you can build your own program, but also think about maybe getting a bit creative about what those programs are and looking at the curriculum to see if it's touching on the skills you want. I think, Kennen, I thought that was such a great point you made. I think sometimes we are like, I want to go to the best program for this title, and like don't even consider the actual skills we're going to leave that school with. And I think it's something we find out. Thank you, Tori. I didn't thank you, Tori. Check the chat, person who asked the question. I don't want to say too many names since it's all being recorded. But I do think that piece is so critical of thinking about the skills you want and the end point, and being very intentional about the classes you take and the research experiences you have and the professional experiences you capture to get you to that point. I just think it's so critical. I wanted to emphasize it. Another question in here, and
Wait,
please
hold on, let me throw one thing in really quick. It just dawned on me is I actually have a friend who recently graduated here in Chicago, whoever asked that question, who that's his dream job. So right now he went the other way. So you went business to science. He was a bioinformaticist and now is helping bring science research to translate, essentially bringing it from the bench to the bedside. But what he's really interested in is exactly that, is doing sustainable farming. So shoot me an email and I could put you in contact too, and he might have even more resources for you.
So I love it. I love it. Sorry, I got excited with these questions. Another question is here. What would you say? Would you say that starting work early every day is an important key to preventing working late nights and weekends all the time? Like, what's your advice for, like, I guess, how to keep from your work bleeding into the weekends and late nights?
Yeah. I don't know if I have the right answer for that, because I think it depends on your program. So I came from a biomedical research background. So my cells dictate my time. I was growing brain cells in culture, and my brain cells said on a Saturday they needed to have their food changed. I had to be there on a Saturday no matter what. But what I learned later on in my PhD was A, that time management key, and B, was respecting my own time. And so I learned in time management how to plan my experiments so that, inevitably there will be times that I have to be there late at night or I have to be there on a weekend, but I plan the experiments so that I'm not doing a bunch of them, that's how it's always going to be. And the second thing is, like, my boss will give me 20 experiments to do and be like, yeah, I can't wait to hear about this next week. And I'm like, well, I could work every hour and not sleep at all and do this, or I will do maybe 2 experiments or 3 experiments this week so that I have some time on the weekend, or I'm not working more than 40, 50 hours a week so that I still have time to enjoy myself. And then just understanding that that is prioritizing, and that any good mentor, any good boss is going to understand that, is that you also have a life. And as long as you're working forward and making progress, then they should be on board with that.
Love it. Love it. Someone else has another question. Do you have any advice for integrating science communication into your education and into your career from the beginning?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. Something that I slightly tried to do in my own program and should have been more vocal about it. And so what I can say is I know quite a few people who do science communication, and one of the coolest things is, not here in the States, but in Australia and Canada, I think is where the other one is that they actually built that into part of their thesis. So they had their main thesis of what they were doing, but they spoke with their advisor and okayed that they could build in a chapter of their thesis about them communicating their own science, which was a really cool way for everybody to kind of win, because you get all this science communication experience, and your professor gets a benefit of you talking about the research that's going on in the lab, and you're still focusing on that project. So talking to your advisor is always the best option. I unfortunately ended up with an advisor who wasn't as keen to that. And so I heard somebody earlier talk about how their advisor also had problems with how much they were making social media content or something like that. So I ended up just doing it behind my advisor's back. Just was like a don't ask, don't tell policy. I wouldn't recommend that. Not that it was bad, never got in trouble or anything like that, but it actually ate away at my own psyche, and the fact that I felt like something that was really core to what I wanted to do and I was excited about. I was making a lot of, I study viruses, so I was making a lot of COVID content that was doing really well. And I couldn't share it in this environment with somebody who I respected as a professional. And so I feel like if you can, establishing that link and defining what you want out of that and setting that with your mentor in the first place is going to be the best way to do that.
I love that. Yay, that is the end of our questions, and it's actually almost perfectly 7:45. Kennen, before we leave, do you have any parting thoughts you want to share with the crowd?
I mean, I just gave you however long that talk is of 5-6 years worth of grad information I have. Yeah, the only last thing is just with that knowing your worth is that grad school doesn't have to suck. A lot of people you might hear, especially at the older years, is that it does. You get burnt out and everything. But what I've learned through my experience, and I have the fortunate opportunity of getting to go through another experience to prove that this is true, is that it really is what you make of it. And that all starts with you being an advocate for yourself and knowing that you are worthy, you are in that program and you have all the bargaining power to enjoy the experience and make sure that's the experience that you want.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. Y'all, that's a wrap on day 2 of the Grad School Success Summit. Yay. Kennen, thank you so much. Y'all, again, throw some reactions up here in the chat, some claps, whatever you want, whatever emoji moves you. Thank you so much, Kennen, for, again, sharing this. I think it's so important, and we kind of, again, forget about our what and our why and our worth in this experience. So this was amazing. You see the comments and the reactions coming through. I hope you just know how much we appreciate you sharing your story with us. Y'all, tomorrow is the last day of the Grad School Success Summit. I'm so excited. We're going to have some great sessions, a lot more about like technical, a lot more like skills and hacks for you all for the upcoming semester and the upcoming academic year. So can't wait to see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening. Take care. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.